Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Great to see so many people here. Thank you so much for your time and joining us for our first ever webinar, one of which we hope is going to be many. So today I'm going to be talking about GFX and providing you to an introduction to our exciting new technology that we've developed together with Beckhoff. So without further ado, I'll press on and firstly give you an introduction to myself. My name is Alec Dick. I'm the HepcoMotion Business Development Manager. I've been involved in mechanical engineering for over 30 years now, and I've been with HepcoMotion for 17 years. Okay, so today's webinar, it's going to be approximately half an hour long, and I'll try to do my best to keep you engaged. So first of all, I'm going to start off with a brief introduction to Hepco, who we are, where we are, and what we do. Then we'll move on to XTS. Some of you I know are very familiar with the technology. Indeed, there are many here from Beckhoff themselves, and I thank you for being here. But there are also many that may not be familiar with the technology. So we'll take a look at it and see how it can potentially revolutionize your operation. Then GFX is fundamental to taking XTS to the next level. The Hepco guide system can really add to the capabilities of the XTS. And underpinning the GFX is V-Guide technology, the core technology behind GFX. And XTS, GFX, the options, we've got unparalleled choice, huge amount of configuration options, and then specials and exciting developments that we've got coming down the pipe. And then finally, I'm going to open up the floor for your questions. There is a question and answer module, so please put them in there and I'll get to your questions at the end of the session. In addition, we do have Jeff Johnson, who's in the chat, who will be able to answer any sort of specific XTS questions. If you @ Jeff Johnson in the chat while the presentation is going through, I'm sure Jeff will be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay, thank you. So Hepco, who are we? We have 4 manufacturing sites, 3 factories in Europe, 1 factory in Asia. In the UK, we have our head office and factory. Braintree, we have our bearing plant in Essex, and we also have an automation division, Hepco Automation, which is providing turnkey solutions for the UK market. They're based in Telford. Looking across to our mainland Europe, we've got sales offices in Benelux, Germany, France, and Spain. Each of those markets, they have their own team of sales engineers, which are out there supporting you and your customers' applications. Looking further afield across to Asia, we have a manufacturing facility and office in Seoul, South Korea. Very important part of the world where we're supporting sort of electronics manufacture, but also emerging technologies such as EV battery manufacture. China and India are some of our newer offices, but these are very fast growing markets, and there's a growing need there for our quality products. So HepcoMotion, who are we? Well, we're a family owned company. We comprise of 425 employees globally, and those sales engineers I mentioned, we've got over 60 that are out there supporting customers with their applications and solving their problems both commercially and technically. Our production capacity, over 60,000 meters of track sold annually, and over 4,000 projects. And we're not talking about individual bearings, we're talking about engaging with design engineers, applications engineers, solving their problems. And beyond this, we have a really strong network of distribution partners around the world. and they're an extension of Hepco, very knowledgeable about our products and able to assist customers in their own right. So that gives us reach in over 48 countries around the globe. Within those areas, we're working in pretty much all industries. Key areas: packaging, pharmaceutical, electronics, food, very much at the forefront. Probably in some ways, it's easy to say the industries that we're not working in, very much like Beckhoff in that respect. So how did the whole working relationship come about with HepcoMotion and Beckhoff? And obviously the customer is the key part in this jigsaw puzzle. So Hepco and Beckhoff have been working together now for over 5 years. And to date, we've successfully completed over 450 joint projects. And it's very much a working partnership with the customer to ensure that both the electronic control and mechanical specification really meets the requirements of the application. So Beckhoff and Hepco, we really collaborate with the customer to make sure that the solution being offered is fully optimized, and often we'll suggest ways in which the application can be improved beyond the original design scope. So what is the XTS technology? As I said, a lot of you are familiar with it, but there are also some that are not. So the Beckhoff Extended Transport System is a revolutionary drive system that combines the benefits of both linear and rotary technology. Each mover is independently driven, meaning that they can move at different speeds, accelerations, directions, or even be completely stationary while other movers are moving around the circuit. With speeds of up to 4 meters per second and accelerations of 4G, the system can operate very dynamically while still maintaining high accuracy and repeatability. The XTS can give vastly improved throughput on a comparatively smaller footprint when compared to a mechanically linked conveyor or carousel system. So the independent movers allow for different dwell times at process stations, and including accumulation zones. It really results in significant improvements in the overall process time. The system is perfect for working alongside high-speed industrial robots. The agile movement, precision, repeatability, very fundamental to robot applications. The intelligent control technology that drives XTS allows for features such as using pairs of carriages as a gripper, as seen in this video. This in itself solves so many challenges for both electrical and mechanical design engineers. If you think about a mechanically driven and linked system, trying to get a separate actuator to operate on an individual platen or carriage that's moving, it's incredibly challenging. So with the intelligent control that XTS is offering, it's solving problems that have been previously insurmountable for design engineers. So what's GFX? How does that fit into the puzzle? Well, GFX, it stands for Guide for XTS, and it's been specifically designed to partner exactly with the XTS system and really extend its capability, its mechanical capability. If you think about the XTS, there are no moving, wearing parts on that. That has to be taken by the track system, and that's exactly what GFX delivers. So in 2012, Beckhoff and HepcoMotion recognized an opportunity to really collaborate and broaden the capability of the highly versatile and dynamic XTS extended transport system. So development started in February 2013 to engineer a highly durable HepcoMotion hardened steel guide track system for the XTS. And in fact, the very first system was installed in a production application still running today and has since completed over 800,000 kilometers of linear travel with only very minimal maintenance. The Hepco GFX track system extends the capability of XTS by providing additional capacity for increased payloads, offset payloads, and very long service life, all at very high duty. In addition to this, Hepco can provide detailed load life calculations to provide the customer with confidence that the solution will meet the demands of the application. A lot of alternative technologies do not offer this same level of confidence in load and life. Underpinning the GFX is V-Guide technology, and this has been the principal product for HepcoMotion for well over 50 years. So this isn't something new. We're not reinventing the wheel. The steel track and bearings offer proven durability, dynamic performance, and a tolerance to harsh conditions. The V profile itself provides a self-cleaning wiping action and also means a means for distributing lubrication between the running surfaces. The V bearings themselves are sealed for life, which means that they will not catastrophically fail. Many XTS applications for high-speed, high-volume industrial projects where low maintenance, reliability, and a long service life are a prerequisite. The HepcoMotion GFX, in this case, really provides a perfect match for the XTS. And of course, there's the Beckhoff reputation. It has a reputation as a world leader for its controls, machine communications, technology, its electric and electronic equipment. Fundamentally, the XTS also has a key mechanical advantage due to its design. The symmetrically opposed magnets basically eliminate the forces from the motor and the magnets. So the movers can be very light. The bearing system does not have to cope with the magnetic forces created by the drive system. In addition, the use of a clothoid path for the 180-degree motors facilitates a very agile movement capability. We look at most oval track systems and they have a running track shape, 180-degree circular arcs connected to a straight element tangential to the arcs. And these are relatively easy to design and make, and indeed our own PRT2 product is based upon this technology. But movers on this path experience a step change in lateral acceleration at the transition. If you think about a running track profile, and I'll encourage you to look at the thumbnail of me, apologies if it's a little bit small, but I'm going to present to you a virtual steering wheel. And if we imagine that I'm driving a car along that running track profile, and we're going along our straight at speed, and then we're suddenly hitting that 180-degree corner. The movement on the steering wheel is very sudden, okay? Very quick movement. Any passengers in the car with me will experience that change in lateral acceleration. They'll be thrown to one side, okay? It's an uncomfortable ride, it unsettles them. The same applies to the product or the payload that is sat on the XTS GFX mover. So the clothoid transition really minimizes this change in acceleration. It's over a further distance that we're changing. Okay, so back to my virtual steering wheel, when we hit the clothoid transition, it's very much a smoother motion. So the passengers in my car are having a much nicer ride. Equally so, the payload on the XTS GFX mover. So there we go, sharp movement, high force. And the clothoid transition, very much a slower transition, lower force on the system. So acceleration disturbs the payload and it shocks the guidance system. And the clothoid transition really minimizes this. And ultimately, this allows for a smoother, faster operation in a small, compact space. So looking at some of the alternative technologies out there, GFX really is compact. Because of this design, it's just over 300 millimeters wide, and that's based on the 180-degree curve. Alternative systems, they're well over 500 millimeters. In addition, the magnet configuration, having them symmetrically opposed, it really allows for a smaller and more agile mover. Other systems where you've got a single magnet, you're relying on the guide system not only coping with the payload, but the magnetic forces from the drive system. And in addition, because of the magnet arrangement, XTS has accurate positioning around the curves as well, something that's not possible with other technologies. So we're going to take a bit of a deeper look at the GFX construction. So far we've looked at the GFX 1TL, and that exclusively uses the Beckhoff 180-degree motor modules. And because of the clothoid curve, it uses a 3-bearing mover design. Now that mover design, it incorporates an eccentric bearing. So after tens of thousands of kilometers, when a little bit of wear may build into the system, you do have the opportunity to adjust that bearing, which eliminates the play and basically resets it back to its factory setting. Conversely, we also offer a PRT2 ring and track system, and this is designed for use with the Beckhoff 45-degree and 22.5-degree motor modules. This gives us much larger diameters, 637 millimeter diameter and 1274 millimeter diameter if necessary. It uses a more typical 4-bearing fixed center carriage arrangement, again with the eccentric adjustability on the bearings. The supply options for GFX at its most basic, it can be a track only with just the movers. In this instance, the customer or the integrator would need to mount this onto their own machine structure. But more commonly, we see the requirement for the base plate and motor support brackets. Okay, and then finally, if the customer is looking for a complete mechanical solution, we can also supply it with the Beckhoff XTS motors installed. So the actual construction of the system, it comprises of an aluminium base plate, 30 millimeters thick, clear anodized aluminium, and this includes the mounting holes and dowel fixtures for the track system. Track system then has the movers mounted, the U-shaped horseshoe movers, and in the center of the construction, you can see the aluminium motor mounting brackets, which allow for the fitting of the Beckhoff XTS motors, and also allows for expansion of these as the temperature increases of the system when it's operating. So the GFX 1TL, it has 4 different mover options, and fundamentally the difference is the smaller mover has smaller bearings, it's narrower, so it's only 52 millimeters long, and conversely at the top end we have a 34 millimeter bearing mover, which is 80 millimeters long. Now there is a weight trade-off, okay, so it's a trade-off between weight and capacity. The PRT2 system, again in terms of supply, we can supply it as a track system and movers only. The options of that configuration we'll look at in a moment, but as you can see there are ovals, rectangulars and circular systems, and the support structure, again if required, and commonly it is, 30 millimeter base plate, but for larger systems it may be more prudent to mount this onto an aluminium extruded profile frame. And again, finally we can offer it with the XTS motor modules installed. So the example we're looking at here is a PRT2 oval system. It's mounted onto an aluminium base plate, motor brackets and movers. And fundamentally you'll notice the difference between this system and the GFX 1TL is you have a lot more space on the inside of the unit. This is particularly useful for tooling, or you could even mount an industrial robot in the center there. And in some ways, that might work out better for minimizing your machine footprint. So the PRT2 really gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of the design options. Standard, oval, circular, or even rectangular systems. The PRT2 option has two different size movers, a mover option with size 25mm bearings, which is 55mm long, or there's a larger 85mm long mover with size 34 bearings. Again, there is a reasonable difference in the mass of these, about 300 grams. Now, we talked about the fact that the bearings on the GFX system are sealed for life, but lubrication on the running surface is fundamental to achieving a long service life with GFX. So we include as standard a bleed lubrication port on the track system, and this allows for lubrication to be applied directly to the V surfaces of the system. There's a machine port in the V, and this can be fed by a third-party lubrication dosing system. As the movers move over this port, as you can see, it really distributes the lubricant around the system as it travels. And maintenance. Fortunately, GFX is very low maintenance. You will hardly ever need to touch this, as with all of our V systems. But should you need to replace a mover, we do include as standard a small removable section. That can be taken out, and then movers can be easily taken out and replaced as necessary. But because we're a manufacturer, we can also really tailor the solution for the customer's needs. And one we see quite often is the need for high precision movers. So we can take either the top or the side faces, those are the mounting faces for the GFX mover, and we can machine them to a higher tolerance. Standard, we're looking at a machining tolerance of plus or minus 0.015 millimeters on the either top or side face. But if we machine that, we can actually bring it down, machine it further on a rail, we can bring it down to within plus or minus 50 microns. So what this means is that every single mover around a circuit will be within 0.1 millimeters, providing very good repeatability. And in applications such as electrical assembly, this could be fundamentally important. In addition, if custom dowel hole patterns or mounting holes are required on the mover, we can accommodate this as a special order. Here's a great example of a system we did recently. It's an S-shaped hybrid system. And it's interesting because it actually incorporates the 180 degree, the 45 degree, and the 22.5 degree Beckhoff XTS motor modules. As you can see, it's not an insignificant system, 70 movers, and overall 45 meters unwound linear length. Another interesting system, a diamond-shaped rectangular system. And this one was quite unusual because it utilizes solely minus 22.5 degree motor modules. So that means that effectively the movers have been flipped and their running face is on the internal perimeter rather than the external. And again, I mentioned about the advantages of having tooling or robotics on the internal face. This is a key example. But further to that, this was quite interesting because it was a modular construction. The customer actually needed it to be extended in the future. So when their process line changes, they can add in additional straight sections, enlarging the system. The base plates themselves, we have a standard design, but of course we recognize the need for customers to mount their tooling or indeed fit services through the center of the system. Might be clearances for industrial robots, so we can accommodate those. Another interesting system, a double-sided GFX. So we have two XTSs mounted together on a common backplate. The advantage this gives, effectively doubles your driving force and your capacity, because the movers can be used together in pairs. But we're not standing still with this technology. We're working with Beckhoff. We're continuously advancing this. And at the moment, we have a Hygienic system being developed in conjunction with Beckhoff. And it's specifically designed for use with the Beckhoff HD IP69 motor modules. Specifically aimed at washdown applications, you'll see that the base plate itself has a number of cutouts to allow the water to run straight through the system, and the bearings themselves have additional sealing to prevent them being washed out from the jet blasts. We're currently undergoing beta testing with this, and all being well, we should be looking at a launch later this year. So, going to wrap up now with a few sort of top tips. These are by no means all-encompassing, but it gives the designers a few ideas of what they need to look for when they're considering these applications. So firstly, consider the application drivers. Space envelope, is that important? Factory floor space, we know that today is incredibly valuable. In these cases, the GFX 1TL with its compact footprint can really be a significant game changer in this area. We're seeing that systems compared to a mechanically driven and linked systems are typically about half the size, so a significant advantage. Performance, is it a particularly agile system, in which case maybe the smaller movers with the 25mm bearings are going to be of benefit. The environment, is it wet or is it a food or pharmaceutical application, in which case the 1TL system and the PRT2 system are available in stainless steel. But in most cases, we do find that the GFX design is driven by the XTS specification. As I mentioned, most applications suit the 180-degree motor module design, and typically we find probably 70 to 80% of the systems we manufacture are to suit the 1TL. PRT2 systems, however, do offer a better choice on larger systems where large tooling stations exist or tooling is required in the center of the circuit. The 25mm bearings, they offer advantages for the dynamics, or where the movers need to be very close to one another. It's a much shorter mover. However, if you can accommodate the 34mm bearings, they will on average give double the life of a 25mm bearing system. Of course, with all mechanical systems, load offsets, moment loads, they're critical to the life of the system. We encourage designers to really design with this in mind. Try and get that payload positioned as central as possible on the mover. And longer movers, if they can be accommodated, they will really increase the moment load capacity. It's a more stable design. Quite an important point, static press forces. A lot of applications we see for assembly operations taking place on the mover, it involves some sort of press force which is being directly applied to the mover as a static force. The capacity for that mover is typically around 100 newtons. We need to quantify that, we need to understand that. And of course, standard systems benefit from the best lead times. We are working on getting standard CAD models for the GFX 1TL. They will be available very soon from the Hepco website. PRT2 will follow, so we're really helping designers realize their designs. In the meantime, please do approach HepcoMotion. And also, any other information you require, case studies, videos, please check out our website, HepcoMotion.com. So that's me for the presentation. I'm going to wrap up here, and I'm going to I'll open the floor to you guys and inviting your questions. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you joining us. Yeah, I hope you all stay safe and well. And I'm now going to take a look at the questions. is the hygienic design of GFX available? This is from Ashel Tosh. As I mentioned during the presentation, it is being developed, and later this year we should have that available. Brian, okay, what minimum maximum ambient temperatures are possible with XTS GFX? That's a very good question, Brian. There are limitations, probably more so on the XTS side of things, because it does generate a lot of temperature. The bearing system itself is reasonably tolerant, and it can go, I mean, if we take a look at a standard bearing system and rail system, it can go from -20 to +100, I believe. But certainly the XTS system is probably the greater consideration, so I'd have to defer to one of my Beckhoff colleagues for that one. There we go. Jeff has kindly answered that one. 5 to 40 degrees C for the XTS motor module. So there's your answer, Brian. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Okay, Kim Hansen. We often get questions about the expected lifetime, kilometers and movers. I understand that this heavily depends on the application, but there should be some figures available for empty movers without load, because that is what competitors supply. Okay, good question, Kim. But even if we take an empty mover, that in itself has a mass, okay? And depending at the speed or the acceleration you move that mover, that mass will have an effect on the bearings. So we could take an empty mover that is moving at, say, only 0.5 meters per second, and it may last, say, 50,000 kilometers of linear travel. However, if we take the same mover and we run it at 4 meters per second, okay, the mass hasn't changed, but the dynamic forces are very much higher. You might only find it will last for 10,000 kilometers, for instance. So I'm sorry that's a bit of a vague answer, but that is fundamentally where we stand with that. So we treat each application on a case-by-case basis. Okay, a question from Sebastian Asklar. Again, apologies if I'm not getting the pronunciations very well. How about systems where no lubrication is possible? Very challenging, Sebastian. The GFX really needs lubrication between the running surfaces. It's fundamental to the design, and we cannot run these systems dry. Thomas Beckhoff, thank you for your question. Do you have a calculation tool? So we do have a calculation tool. It is in development, which will be called the expert system. I have given the American team a brief introduction to this, and it is in the works, and it will basically give you a first pass for a GFX application. So you can put in the basic application information, and it effectively gives you a traffic light response: green, amber, or red, depending on whether it's green, good to go, amber is maybe, red is definitely not. Okay, so that is in the works, and we're hoping to have that available soon. Okay, next question is from Mohit. Any clean room application certificate with Hepco XTS solution? Currently, the track system isn't clean room rated. I'm not exactly sure where we stand with the Hygienic system, but certainly there isn't any certification in existence at the moment. Okay, Sebastian, is there a price list for standard length systems like 1 meter long? Well, we can certainly give you, we will often do a budgetary price. So if you can provide us with your requirements, and we can turn around a budgetary price literally within a day. Okay, Mark Ruberg, a good question. When heat generation becomes an issue, what cooling options are available? It's a great question, and it's something we've actually worked with a couple of customers in the past, and we have included water cooling ports in the motor mounting brackets. Okay, so this gives the opportunity to pump a liquid in one end, transfer it through the aluminium motor bracket. Obviously, aluminium is very good at conducting heat. We very much leave the design of this cooling system up to the customer, but it is something we can incorporate into the design as a special. Okay. Walter Ferromans is asking if an ATEX version is available. ATEX explosive environment are very, very challenging, and currently what we would do is leave that up to the customer or integrator to provide that ATEX rating. It normally needs special grounding, and it's certainly not an area of our expertise. Is there the Hepco bill of materials that can be selected by the Beckhoff engineer, or do every applications need to be discussed with Hepco engineers? Okay, thank you for your question. Certainly because of the nature of the applications we're dealing with, they're very big, very complex. We really do need to look at applications on a case-by-case basis. Without understanding the application detail, it's not possible to just say, here's a system, carry on, it will be fine. We really do need to tailor it. As we looked at during the presentation, there are various different size movers available, and we really tailor it to make sure that it's optimized for both the load and the dynamics of the system. Okay, is it available to have some kind of chart with maximum axial forces that could be applied to each mover? Okay, so in terms of payloads, again, it's very much dependent on how fast the system is moving. But for the larger mover, so there's the 34mm bearing diameter, you could potentially put up to 10 kilos on that system. Now, the track system itself, the bearings are actually incredibly highly rated. We are building a lot of capacity into this system. And, you know, the ultimate capacity is over a couple of 100 kilos, but you wouldn't ever need to want to move that on an XTS system. So really, again, it's very much, we need to take each application on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes we can actually double up and use two movers together to increase the capacity. Certainly that's something we've done with an application recently. So if you do have something in mind, please send us through the details and we can take a look at that. Pierre, do you think we can image to use this system for an outside application with some rain and dust? Well, as I mentioned during the presentation, the systems we've looked at today are available in stainless steel. Okay, so the tracks and the bearings are available with a stainless steel material. Dust is certainly not a major issue for the V-guide system. It is self-cleaning because of the differential in diameters between the bottom of the V and the outer V. As the bearing rotates around the V-guide system, it actually pushes any dirt and debris to the outside. So certainly we can accommodate those applications, and I'd encourage you to send that through, and our technical sales engineers can take a look at that for you. Sergio, in XTS, each mover should be tuned according to the stiffness to eliminate resonances, while there's suggested filter parameters for each Hepco mover type. Well, certainly in terms of the friction between mover to mover, it's extremely consistent. And when we set them up in the factory, they are set with a spring balance test to finely tune them to make sure that from one mover to another, the driving force is very, very consistent. And in that respect, the V-guide system is excellent at providing consistency across the whole system. The actual tuning and the filters, really, that's a question for the Beckhoff team. And maybe Jeff can chip in with that one. Thanks again, Jeff. Doug, Doug Sheehan, can you further discuss options for providing a complete assembled solution with Beckhoff components for our customers in the US? Yes, I can. I can absolutely help you with that. Together, we're working with our partner in the USA, Bishop Wisecarver, and they are very much an extension of HepcoMotion over there. They are currently being, we're engaging in a very thorough training program where they will be building and assembling GFX systems, and in particular what we're focusing on first of all is the assembly of the motor modules onto the XTS system. So we're not quite there yet, but it's very much been worked on. The intention is that a whole team of their engineers was going to come over to Hepco within the last couple of weeks, but obviously with the global situation that's unfortunately not been possible. But as soon as we can resume that, we absolutely will. And that's the full intention, is that Bishop Wisecarver in the US will be offering that as a service, which ultimately will be able to expedite the supply of these systems into the US. So Salvador asks, which is the lifetime of these systems as usual? So a lifetime question is great. And typically what we will do is tailor the system to make sure that it meets the needs of the customer. So if you say that you need your system to work for, say, 5 years, our applications engineers will work through the application and make sure that the solution we're offering will achieve what it requires. But often when we give a life calculation, and depending on the application, it may be anything from 20,000 up to 50,000 kilometers. As I mentioned at the top end of this presentation, we've got a system in operation now which has done 800,000 kilometers. Okay, so it can considerably vary depending on the payload of the application, but absolutely we give you a confident figure as to what you can expect. And just to elaborate on lifetime, that doesn't mean you have to take that GFX track system and throw it away. Generally what it means at worst is replacement of the bearings, but often you can just adjust the eccentric bearings and take it back to its factory setting. So you can do that certainly 2 or 3 times within the overall life of the system. Okay. Okay, Ivo, approximate delivery. Okay, so for a standard system, I talked about standard systems having the best lead time. For a GFX 1TL, relatively short with sort of 10 or so movers, then our manufacture time is somewhere in the region of about sort of 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, for special options, then that lead time can get considerably longer, particularly if you want stainless steel, for example. But it really depends on the option you're looking for. Keep it standard, and we can keep those delivery times to a minimum. Okay, for a long oval system, you'll probably not deliver the system in one part. What is the average length of a section of the 30mm base plate? Great question. So the base plate length is typically machined in sort of 1.5 meter sections, but we may actually ship sort of multiple sections together. We try not to break them down into too many pieces. If we take, for example, the long sort of 45 meter S-shaped system that we saw in one of the videos, that would have been split down into sort of several pieces. But it would have been multiples of those 1.5 meter backplates. So what about mounting upside down? Any concerns regarding the lubrication? Great question. Okay, GFX XTS can be mounted in pretty much any orientation. So if you want to mount it up on its side, or indeed if you want to mount it upside down, the system will run quite happily in any of those orientations. The only thing you have to consider, if you're running it in its vertical orientation, we've got additional forces to consider from gravity as we go around the curve. With regards to the lubrication, it's of a sufficient consistency, and we only recommend a very small amount such that it clings to the surface of the V-guide system. It does not spray off or drop down, okay? And it's a continuous lubrication. Very, very small amount, but it's continuous over regular intervals. Mode asks if it's Hepco is able to make a custom-made mover to carry more or heavier payloads based on a suitable speed. Okay, so what we will do in those instances, Mode, is really we can actually make movers operate together in pairs. Certainly I've seen an application recently that we've worked on with a customer in the United States, where they had a relatively heavy payload in excess of 10 kilograms. In that instance, we're using two movers that are working together. Okay, so that's one of the options we can do for that particular instance. But in terms of movers with, you know, single movers, no, the biggest one is the 34 millimeter full bearing mover as used on the PRT2 system. That will give you the maximum capacity, and ultimately that single mover is capable of carrying, you know, sort of 8, maybe 10 kilos at a push, but at a relatively slow speed. Okay. Question from Wim. Hi Wim, great to see you in it. Is any kind of lubrication okay to use on a GFX, or do we need to look at some specs for lubricant, such as the strength of the lubricant film? Okay, so there's a specific viscosity that we look for the lubricant, but in terms of the actual specification, it's really not fussy. And another thing that can be used, you know, for the right application, we mentioned about using a stainless steel track system. You can use a food grade lubricant. Okay, so there are options. The main important thing is viscosity. Okay, because it needs to be runny enough such that the movers can distribute it around the system, but not so runny that it's dripping off. Okay, and again, there is a document that supports the lubrication and those specifications. Okay, Ashutosh is asking for vertical systems. Is there any possibility of brakes or stoppers? So fundamentally, this is more of a sort of an XTS function, and the XTS can actually be used to hold the mover in position. Okay, so the torque it generates to move the mover around the system can also be used to hold it in position. And maybe one of the Beckhoff experts in the chat might want to chip in with that, but that's my understanding. In terms of mechanically, no, there's no mechanical brakes or stoppers that we do for this system. Any fast method to detect the mover bearing needs to be changed rather than we calculate a travel distance by the mover. Great question, and I know that it's something that that Beckhoff have looked at, and I know that there's one system where in actual fact the electronics can be used to detect variations in preload. Okay, so you know, if there's likely to be an issue with a bearing that needs changing after a very long period of time, I believe it is possible, and again, I can't really speak for Beckhoff, but I believe it is possible that the software can actually detect differences in the driving force and preload. I think everything seems to be wrapped up here. Like I say, thank you ever so much. It's great to see so many people joining us today. This is our first webinar. We will be doing more. Sorry, I'm just reading some additional comments in the chat. Hi Alec, when is the next introduction for another system type? Very soon. I think our next webinar is going to be an introduction on V-guides and V-guides principles. So please do keep checking our social media, our website, our emailers. We will keep you up to date with this. Really, thank you again very much for attending, all of you. Stay safe during these difficult times, and thanks again. I'm going to sign off here. Thank you, guys.